high above the chimney top, that's where you find me, oh, somewhere over the rainbow, way up high. The dream that you dare to fly, oh,
inspired so much that I write. She's my Van Gogh, such a work of art. This is where my love lies, in the sensitive heart. So what's your name? Tell me your number. It's such a cold game. You all I want is summer.
Tell me where you're going. Waste a day and spend the night underneath the sunrise. Show me where your love lies. Sorry if it's hard to catch my vibe. I need a lover to trust. Tell me you're on my side. Are you down for the ride? It's not easy with someone to catch my eye.
Let the bass kick.
You got me some type of way. Got you still feeling this way. I do not know what to say. Yeah. But I know it's you. Come back and look at your face. Now I wanna know how you taste. Usually don't give it away. Yeah. But you know I'm already thinking about it. Then I realize she's right there. And I'm at home like, damn, this ain't fair. Break up with your girlfriend. Yeah, 'cause I'm bored. You can hit it in the morning. Yeah, let's go. I know it ain't right, but I don't care. Break up with your girlfriend. Yeah, 'cause I'm bored. This shit always happen to me. Yeah. Why can't we just play for free? Practically on my knees. Yeah. But I know I shouldn't be about it. You know what you're doing to me. You're singing my songs in the streets. Yeah. Acting on innocent beats. And I know you already thinking about it.
Let the bass kick.
Then you realize she's right there. And you're at home like that.
Think about it.
She can't
Think about
compare.
Think about it.
Break up with your girlfriend. Yeah, 'cause I'm bored.
Think about it.
You can hit it in the
Think about it.
morning. Yeah, let's go.
Think about it.
I know it ain't right, but I don't care. Break up with your girlfriend. Yeah, 'cause I'm bored. Girlfriend. With your girlfriend. You can say I'm hating if you want to, but I only hate on it 'cause I want you. Say I'm tripping if you feel like, but you without me ain't right. You can call me crazy 'cause I want you, and I never fucking met you. Say I'm tripping and it ain't right. You without me ain't nice. Break up with your girlfriend. Yeah, 'cause I'm bored. You can hit it in the morning. Yeah, let's go. I know it ain't right, but I don't care. Break up with your girlfriend. Yeah, 'cause I'm bored. Girlfriend, baby, with your girlfriend. With your girlfriend.
I'll admit I was wrong. What else can I say? She broke my heart and not my heart. I was wrong, I was gone. Don't make it right, but I promise there were no feelings involved. She said,
Yes, 1, 2, 3, perfect.
was it real or just for show?
That'd be great.
She said, save your apologies. Baby, I just gotta know. How long has this been going on? You've been coming up on me while you're calling me baby. How long has this been going on? You've been looking so shady. I've been feeling it lately, baby. I'll admit it's my fault, but you gotta believe me when I say it only happened once. I tried and I tried, but you'll never see that. You're the only one I
Test.
wanna love. She said, boy, tell me honestly, was it real or just for show? She said, save your apologies. Baby, I just gotta know. How long has this been?
Let the bass kick. Think about it. 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 Think about it.
Visual down, radar down. What's happening? This may be the biggest thing that's ever happened. This may be the biggest thing that's ever happened. This may be the biggest thing that's ever happened.
sapphire and moonlight. We danced for hours in the same tequila sunrise. Her body fit right in my hands, la la la. You felt like oh la la la, yeah. I love it when you call me señorita. I wish I could pretend I didn't need ya, but every touch is ooh la la la. It's true la la la. Ooh, I should be running. Ooh, you know I love it when you call me señorita.
Before. Good morning, everybody. Let's try that again. Good morning, everybody. There we go. One more time. Good morning, everybody. We are ready. Oh, you didn't have to be that formal. Glad to see you all with real smiles, not smizes. Thank you, Ryan and others who supported this event and made sure that we were going to be outside in the shade at 72 degrees and able to be maskless. So thank you, Weather, for cooperating, and thank you all for being here. It is a pleasure to be together and a pleasure to have some time together this morning to welcome everybody. So we have a program of 4 speakers. We are the 4 Musketeers today, here to entertain you, give you some updates, make some introductions, and to welcome you. That's really the point of the event. We are a family of sorts. We are a work family. We are a Saddleback family, and it's really important that we feel that way when we come together, and that our new people, who I will introduce in just a moment, also feel that way. Let me give a couple of quick acknowledgments first. I want to acknowledge and thank our trustees for being here. Would you all mind standing for just a moment to say hi to everybody? And Terry, I know you're out there. Thank you. Thank you so much. I will introduce her in just a moment more formally, but I want to introduce and welcome Dr. Juliana Barnes, our new chancellor. And sometime today, I don't know, when's the push out, Jenny, on the bios for the new people? It already went out. You already have in your email biographies of all, little bios of all the new peeps who have joined our family this year. So take a look at that, but can I ask first all the new faculty to stand up, please, and say hi. 19 new full-time faculty, and I gotta tell you, they are amazing. They are going to blow your minds. Will all of our new classified professionals please stand? Welcome. We are very glad to have you as part of the Saddleback family. We are honored, in fact. Will both of the new managers stand up? I'm trying to think, how many new managers do we have? There we go. Welcome. Welcome, everybody. So if those faces stay with you, I hope they will over the next few months, if you would make sure you do everything you can to make those folks feel welcome. Remember the first time you came to Saddleback. Remember the first time you were on any job and wanted to feel like you were part of a community and a family and just waited for people to reach out and invite you to coffee and invite you to lunch. So please don't leave them hanging too long. Make sure they know how important they are to us and how good we are to have them as part of our family. So welcome, everybody. We're going to get right into it. I am going to introduce at this very moment the President of the Board of Trustees, Marcia Milchiker.
Thank you. Hello? Okay, worked. Good morning, Saddleback College professors, administrators, and classified professionals. Welcome back. It's the beginning of a brand new academic year. I love the rhythm of academia and being on college campuses, whether when I taught at biology at Santa Ana College, working towards my AA degree in Spanish at Saddleback College, participating in brilliant presentations at Professional Development Week, or shaking hands with students at our commencements. Even before I was a board member, my sons attended Saddleback College with me. They attended the splendid preschool while I took enrichment classes. We fell in love with Saddleback, and soon I made your family my family. It's delightful to be with you today in person at the beginning of a new semester. This year looks more like a brand new year than ever, and nobody needs a fresh start more than we do. It's a time to relaunch and reconnect. Let's face it, these past few years were tough, and we faced challenges like we never had before. Professors, you were right on the front line in it all, and I'm so proud of how quickly you pivoted and learned new systems. You pulled together when it mattered, and it made all the difference. You helped your students who are also facing enormous challenges to adjust and to succeed. In each episode of This Week in Virology, top virologists discuss the etiology of viral diseases such as COVID-19, monkeypox, polio, and Lengia. Our board relies on scientific data with every decision we make to keep our staff and our students safe. Your steadfast efforts to adapt to each required health measure have allowed our students to continue their education. Now a new school year is upon us, and we are all looking forward to getting back to our new normalcy. I'm confident that the same strength and resilience that brought us through these past few years will lead us to even more excellence on each and every one of these fronts. This is a particularly propitious time for Saddleback College because we are delighted to welcome our new chancellor, Dr. Juliana Barnes, to our academic community. Welcome, Dr. Barnes. We have a lot to be excited about. We're closing achievement gaps, we have high expectations for all of our students, and we're bringing marvelous new buildings on site and on our campuses. On behalf of our Board of Trustees, we thank you for all you bring to Saddleback College. You have shown your commitment to your students day in and day out, and for this we are grateful. We have selected our professors and staff and have chosen the best. So, you're a carefully chosen group. It's not critical to have dazzling trustees, but it is critical to have brilliant, committed, and caring professors because it's you who works directly with our students. Whatever challenges come our way, we will face them together and united and do what's best for our students. As president of the board, Please let me affirm that the Board of Trustees is here to support your efforts and wants to hear about your challenges and your successes. Please reach out to us anytime. One last comment. When Mother Teresa was accepting the Nobel Peace Prize in 1979, she said, "We work hard all day long, like we're only a drop of water in the ocean. But individual drops were not in the ocean would be dry." Each one of you is a drop in our ocean, and without you, we would be dry. You're greatly appreciated, and I'm proud to call you part of our family. We are Saddleback, and we got this. So have a great semester, and thank you all for your commitment to our students.
At this time, I would like to welcome our new Chancellor, Dr. Juliana Barnes, and may I say, as she makes her way up to the podium, her biography is available at the district website, but let me speak outside of the biography and say that it has been a pleasure to get to know her a bit in the last couple weeks. We were lucky enough to be at a conference together in San Diego just before she started. John Hernandez and I know the trustees, are very excited about her reign and her tenure, and we're very excited at Saddleback to welcome our new Chancellor, Dr. Juliana Barnes.
Well, greetings, Saddleback College. I believe I was part of the unofficial welcoming line, so I think I met 75% of you, and you had to say hi to me in order to get the bacon. So thank you for entertaining me this morning in the food line. So it's my pleasure to join in on the welcome to the fall. And I don't say welcome back because, you know, there's quite a few folks that stayed here all summer long, faculty, just letting you know that. But welcome to the fall 2022 semester. It's hard to believe that it's fall 2022. And thank you to our wonderful Board of Trustees and your wonderful president for allowing me to welcome you and to share a few remarks today. So today is actually my 9th day as the new chancellor of the South Orange County Community College District, and I could not be more elated and honored to join this community. Obviously, I read every single document that I could read. I read everything online, but even in these 9 days, and frankly, even in the welcoming line, you all have further validated that this is where I am to be with this beautiful community. I've been hearing about the tenure for many of the folks here, 10 years, 20 years, 30 years. There's someone here, gosh, I gotta remember your name. You said you were here for 40 years. Who just told me you were here for 40 years? And I was like, there's no way you were here for 40 years. Yes. I was like, you got here when you were finished kindergarten. So, but obviously there's a lot of longevity which speaks volumes to this community because as President Stern mentioned, you know, we spend about a third of our lives, if not more, in the workplace. So this is an extended family. So again, I'm the new family member and I appreciate you welcoming with your open arms. And so it is my first couple of weeks. I am engaging in some proactive dialogue with members of the college community and the district community because one, I want to get to know you. But two, although I read the various documents that you have and your websites, I really want to hear from you what you believe are those important aspects of the colleges and the district and where you believe we need to go in terms of improvement, growth, and opportunity as we forge ahead. And so I am calling this my 100 Days of Listening Tour. And the purpose is twofold. One, as I mentioned, to get to know you all, and then two, again, to hear from you so that I could, what I'm hoping to do is to identify some themes in terms of strengths and opportunities that will serve as a framework as we re-envision and the future of our colleges in our district, and again, serving as a framework and action as we forge ahead in the future. I'm not even looking at my notes. I don't even know where I am right now, but I just kind of do this. So, you know, being new, I know a lot of times people want to know, like, who is this person coming in as a chancellor? And as I shared with our board members, I've had the opportunity to meet with almost all but one board member. You know, it is a big deal for you to bring in a new administrative leader and this position called the chancellor position. And just likewise, it is a big deal for me too, both personally and professionally. I am a longtime SoCal person, specifically basically San Diego, California. I have my entire family and friends are in San Diego. And I know everybody goes, that's just an hour away. I know, but I made this bold move 1 hour north to South Orange County. Not too shabby. I moved to Dana Point near Strands Beach, and I was like, okay, I could get used to this. And so obviously it's a big move for everyone. So that's a little bit about me. And I think many of you, it was kind of a blur, the interview process, because it's such an unnatural process. But I know some of you were in the room during my first interview. Many of you were also in the room during the forum. But just briefly, and I don't want to linger on my professional background, but I do come with 23 years of experience in the California community colleges, split between 2 districts, and I spent about a decade at the University of California. And I'm hoping, trustees, that this is my last stop. I actually, yes, huh? I get getting claps from the trustees. And frankly, I did share with them last week that I read an article about why CEOs leave. And about a third of the CEOs leave due to retirement. About a third of the CEOs leave due to problem relationships. And then the next third, it's a potpourri of other things. And so I did share, I hope I'm in the 1/3 that is able to depart due to retirement. So I'm just going to put that out into the world. All right. See, I always tell my kids that I really am funny, and they don't believe me. So I do have, speaking of children, I do have 2 children as well, just on the path of sharing a little bit more about myself. It is a big deal because they are my heart. So I have 2 daughters, one who's 18 and one who's 24. And my 24-year-old just entered into a faculty internship program in the community colleges down in San Diego. And I did try to inspire her to think about a career in administration, and she said, can I say this? Hell no. Okay. So she is entering into the community colleges. So, like many of our students, this is Juliana Barnes, me. Like many of our students, I was the first member of my family to attend college. So I do come from a low-income family. My mom was in 10th grade when she dropped out of school. She was 16 years old when she started having babies, and by the time she was 20, she was single with 3 babies. So I grew up with my single mom. So obviously, college was not the thing that we talked about in my family. I just happened to stumble upon college. I happened to enter college. And frankly, if you all can think back to your early days in college, and I think for some, yeah, I could do this, and for some, and for many of us, it was hard. So I'll tell you, my first year of college is really what drove me to enter into a lifelong career in education. Again, being first gen, I didn't know about support services. I didn't know that there was a tutoring program. I didn't know that I could go talk to my professors. I didn't know all of this. All I know is I worked 3 jobs. I worked at Marshall's department store. I sold sunglasses at the swap meet. And then my favorite job is that I washed dishes in the cafeteria, the trays that the students would, it was all you can eat, and the students would throw their food on the tray, and it would go on a conveyor belt behind the window. I proudly received those trays and washed those dishes, and that's because I got free meals. And frankly, being in the community, it was at a big university down in San Diego, I didn't feel like I belonged. I thought maybe they made a mistake. Maybe I don't belong here. But guess what? You know where I found my family? It was actually in the cafeteria with the cafeteria workers. And so, needless to say, there was a lot of trials and tribulation during my college years. But, through hard work, good luck, beautiful people who supported me, I eventually got out and graduated. But it was not by design. And as I said, that was really the inspiration for me to enter into a lifelong career in education. And I really vowed that our students should not enter into the colleges by chance, but by design. They should not progress through the colleges by chance, but by design. They should not have to find a little pocket of campus where they feel like they belong. They should be able to go in and out of the classroom and get that sense of belonging. I know a lot of you know I'm very inspired by Laura Rindon, who really developed a student development theory that really had more of a diverse lens. And then we often hear, for example, that the more students are connected and the more that they engage, the more that they persist and complete. We hear that, right? So why is it that we continue to see for decades students who are disproportionately impacted? Why is it that we continue to see equity gaps? Is it just that particular populations of students don't want to connect and engage? It's not on the students, it's on us. And what Laura Rindon would say, her theory of validation, is that it's incumbent upon the agents, the educational agents, to create the conditions that validate students' social and cultural experiences. And then by creating those conditions, that's a prerequisite to connection and involvement and engagement. So the beautiful thing is that I have learned so much about Saddleback College, and you all are fabulous. I'm getting emotional thinking about it right now. You all are fabulous. There are those things of enduring value which I want to know more about and I want to be sure to support. It's not all about change. Part of it is about identifying as a collective what those valuable elements of the institution are. And I've learned so much. I've met a bunch of people, for example, in the emeritus program, the honors program. I know you have a fabulous athletics program. You have beautiful CTE programs and other academic programs. And you all were recognized, both colleges, which is unheard of. You were in the top 150 colleges recognized by the Aspen. That's like the premier recognition of the United States. Both colleges. That was a draw for me, y'all. I'm just telling you. I was like, bring me there all day long. 2 colleges, which tells me that this is a college that is student-centered, equity-minded, innovative, and that you are ready to roll up your sleeves to make sure that all students succeed. So again, beautiful work. And so what are those things and where do we have momentum? Those are the things that we need to collectively identify and that I need to be sure that I am supporting. But I think we could all agree as well, if we continue to dig into our disaggregated data, we still see those equity gaps. And so we know that there is still work to be done. So given that data, and we are a data-informed institution, and given where we are in this world with COVID, we used to say the post-pandemic, what are we gonna do post-pandemic? We said it in 2020. We said it in 2021. We're saying it in 2022. I'm not even saying the word post-pandemic anymore. We as a collective are also going to have to work together to re-envision and reimagine the future of Saddleback College and SOCCCD, and given COVID, living with COVID. So these 2 forces in terms of equity and this pandemic, how are we going to work together to re-envision and reimagine who we are, who we need to be, and who our community and our students need us to be? We know, again, enrollment to me, I don't even like to say the word enrollment because I think the love language of the community is really student access, success, and equity, but our enrollment is down. And it's easy for us to say, oh, well, everybody's enrollment is down statewide and nationwide. But that's a marker. That's a marker, and I think that's an invitation for us to think about that and to really prioritize community re-engagement. So together, I am eager to work with you all to, again, establish what those priorities are as we forge ahead. I think, it's this opening session, the beginning of the fall semester, me being a new chancellor, it just reminds me of new beginnings. And we really, truly do have an opportunity to, again, build upon the strengths, but also take on this new opportunity to do some new beautiful things given these forces that are happening. And there will be implications for employees, for instruction, for student support services, for facilities, for operations. There are things, and I think sometimes change sounds difficult, but I know that this college community is innovative and open, and that you're welcoming that change so that we can ultimately do what we're called to do, and that is to break down those barriers, ensure that all of our students are succeeding, and that we have the best working and learning environment in this nation. So with that said, I'm proud of myself. I didn't look at my notes, probably because my I was told I need 1.5, and this is 1.25, so I can't even read my notes. But with that said, you all, thank you for your warm invitation and just graciousness for allowing me to come on in, and I will look forward to seeing you for years to come. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Barnes. We have a second thing in common. As many of you know, I often bring notes up and then go rogue on myself and rarely look at the notes. But today's going to be different. I'm going to look at the notes, and I'm going to tell you why. So for the last couple of weeks, I have been collecting from leaders across the college in various projects, initiatives, units, their updates, like tell me big things that happen. And I said to them, I want wow moments. I really just want wow moments from the last year, and then something that makes you feel wow about what you're going to be doing in the coming year. So I got all these sent in, and then I'm a procrastinator. So this weekend, I sat down to do the synthesis and the curation of all those things. And as I was doing this work, particularly sort of late Friday, I had this moment of kind of euphoria, realizing, oh my gosh, we have done some amazing work, and this is an incredible year. So my job today, because I often come to you, if I'm doing a formal presentation, I'll tell you a secret. I have an outcome. Like, I go in with an outcome. Like, if we were talking about COVID, my outcome might be, you all need to feel safe. You all, at the end of my presentation, you all need to know what's going on, and you need to feel like you're in a really safe environment. Well, today my outcome is, by the time I leave this podium, you will feel incredibly proud of who we are at Saddleback, and you will feel incredibly optimistic about the year ahead. So here we go. Here's my job, and I'm going to see if it'll work. And by the way, to inspire myself so that it would be reflected in my face and my body habitus, I listened to the soundtrack of La La Land, and It's Another Sunny Day. Do you know that song? It's Another Sunny Day from the opening. Like, there's no way you can listen to that song and not feel proud of the moment and optimistic about our future. So that was my inspiration. So you'll have that humming in your head by the end of today. So I'm going to start with talking about a few things that are happening around the college, and then we will end up talking a little bit about equity, and then before I introduce Heidi, Heidi and I talked, and we each want to talk about a disproportionately impacted group today, and we've each chosen groups that we don't often talk about. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the non-traditional students, the 25 plus, and Heidi's going to talk about our differently abled student and differently abled students and neurodiversity. So we'll bring Heidi up soon enough. But first I want to share a little bit about what's been happening at the college while some of you were gone, not all of you were gone, as Chancellor Barnes said. So first, facilities. Here's some things we got done last year. So you may have noticed, if you were gone for the summer, we've put up the frame of an entire building over the course of the summer. Gateway is well underway. Our one-stop student service center, modeled after an Apple store, is on its way toward being completely constructed and ready for us, perhaps close to the end of this academic year, and certainly open next fall. We have been through the entire planning process and are coming out of DSA approval on 2 new buildings that will begin construction this year as well. One is our new Math and Computer Science building, which will replace the old science building. And it's, I don't know how to describe this building. Come and take a picture. We put it out on the web before, but it looks like a museum. It is just an amazing building, and it actually already won a National Architecture Award before it ever even went into the approval or construction phase. It's already been winning awards. And we will also, as we also finish the planning and approval process for our new building at ATEP called Saddleback ampersand ATEP, Saddleback at ATEP, that one will begin construction this year as well, and it's coming out of DSA approval, or already did. FMO and vendors for big jobs that we bring in when something exceeds our own capacity have finished painting health sciences and science. We repaired the community ed building. We put up our first mural. You're going to be invited, if you haven't already, to an opening for our first mural, the first, we hope, of many projects, public art projects around our campus. We completed, finally, the ADA project, building a new accessible walkway between the LRC and the Fine Arts Complex. This fall, we'll be painting BGS in and out, and yes, nicer colors. Halls in health science, yeah, some people are fans, I know, it's all subjective. But I think you're gonna like the new colors. Halls in health sciences and science will be painted, the pool will be renovated, we're gonna begin demolition of the old math and science building sometime around December, we think. In the coming year, in general, we'll begin construction on that building and our Saddleback at ATEP building. We'll begin construction of our all-gender restroom in BGS finally. That one is in DSA for approval right now. We're going to do a complete reno of the HVAC system in BGS. If you've had some problems, yes, I know there's some people who are glad to hear that one. We'll begin a new softball facility and a lot. We'll do our solar canopy in nearby parking lot 5A, the first phase of our solar. We're going to replace the baseball turf with artificial turf, like what's going in our softball field to save water. We'll put up a new scoreboard there. If you had trouble seeing the score when our baseball team made finals this year, you will be looking forward to that. We begin several landscape beautification projects around campus, and we're designing both a new greenhouse and a wonder sign. And maybe we will begin the quad reno by summer. So this campus, as we know it, is transforming in front of our eyes. And yes, there's a little bit of dust, but as I asked us all a year ago, let's tolerate the dust because the end product is going to be quite amazing. We had a large influx of one-time funds over the last year. So in the CRC process, Corey is putting out today, or Roxanne is putting out today, a list of the projects that were funded by CRC. It totals $7.3 million in funding of CRC requests, a record. Some of the high-ticket items include the new greenhouse, tons of new pianos for fine arts, and all of the lighting in the studio arts classes. Those alone, the greenhouse is at $2 million. We think that's going to be modest. Pianos, I think that's like $800,000. These are big ticket items that have been approved that we would have struggled to do just a few years ago. So we are glad to have that one-time funding. Of the $7.3 million allocated in resources for these CRC requests, a shared governance process that we now go through, we no longer come to the president when we have a request, and if the president likes us, we get the money, and if the president doesn't know us, we don't. We have a shared governance process that works really well. Thank all of you who are part of CRC and part of that process. That process gave $5.7 million in funding for one-time projects and $1.6 million in funding for ongoing projects, which aligns with where our funding has been. So again, this year, we will have a banner year. In the previous year, it was mostly federal funding that was allowing us to fund all those one-time projects. This year, it's going to be more state funding, but pull in those CRC requests. This is the time to make us better for our future, to make investments in enrollment, student success, and narrowing those equity gaps. Do those things, and your request may be funded if it aligns with those goals, and you can show us that it is high return on investment for our students. I want to talk a little bit about enrollment, but not much, and I'll tell you why. We are doing a lot better than most. Yes, we suffered a decline in enrollment last year, which was kind of the banner year in terms of marking where colleges lost enrollment. We lost about 13% of our enrollment. Colleges across the state lost about 20%. So we did better than most. We're not proud of still having sinking enrollment, and we have work to do. But I want us to focus, instead of on enrollment as this sort of business construct, on the things that underlie that loss of enrollment, which for all of us, the thing that we all do that makes a difference is guaranteed access, which means removing the barriers that stand in the way of people enrolling. And please don't forget this, student success. So I'll give you an example of this. So Penny sent me some updates on Promise, and the last Promise cohort, cohort 4, this year, 77% of those students are returning. So normally about 50 to 60% in a good year of our students return for a second year. So for Promise, it's 77%. It's about a quarter of the 1,200 students, or about 300 students, get this now, came back that wouldn't have come back had there not been the supports in place that Promise provides them. So those 300 students that come back for a second year are enrollments that we wouldn't have had. So Jenny could go out and advertise more and bring in 300 new students. And Jenny's doing some really good marketing and ad campaigns right now that are bringing in new students. But for us, we can hang on to the students we have now instead of churning and hold on to them into the second year and all the way to completion. That's something all of us can do. We can all do the access part, we can all do the student achievement part, and we will market, we will advertise, we will find those new community partnerships. But the thing that all of us can do is work together to make all those students feel welcome, to lower their barriers, and to make them successful into their second year and beyond. So what are we doing in terms of increasing access? Some of the stuff I guarantee you won't know about, because the people, the heroes who are making this stuff happen are in some ways doing it very quietly and modestly. And that can be the Saddleback way, but I am here to do their boasting today for them. So first, Anna McDonald, our new Director of Outreach and Strategic Partnerships, has been working to build a team of enrollment coaches. This is something the private colleges have had for a long time. By the end of this term, we will have 4 enrollment coaches in place. We will have a full team in outreach and strategic partnerships to Sherpa students through that process that can be so daunting and so bureaucratic, and to make sure they don't get lost. We used to lose half of our students between the time of application and registration. Half of them didn't even make it through the registration process. That's what enrollment coaches will help us with. We will launch a new website. That's about access. Our website has been largely focused internally, serving as a storage base for digital documents. That's not what a website's supposed to do. We have SharePoint for that. We have our own ways of storing information, and it prevents people from being able to see what they need to see, and it makes the website feel cluttered. So we're about to launch a new website that is very much clean, modern, and externally focused, and it makes a difference in access for students. Student service supports have all remained both online and on ground, and will continue to do so over the long term. We will make things accessible for people whether they want to be online or on ground. Pardon me. Testing. Okay, I think I got it. We've hired a new basic needs coordinator. There's been a lot of focus on basic needs, and we welcome Emma. Emma, are you in the house? You'll meet Emma. Emma's our new basic needs coordinator. The pantry, we now have a partnership going to stock the pantry with a nonprofit called South County Outreach. We love that partnership. We're about to partner with another nonprofit to actually bring in produce. So students will not only be able to get dry goods, non-perishables, but they'll also be able to get fresh produce as part of their stop at the pantry. We're actually working on creating a whole basic needs center, perhaps in its own location, in a destigmatizing area, but a highly accessible area on campus, where students will be able to do the pantry and talk to Emma and find whatever they need in terms of their basic needs support. In technology, we continue the loaners. The loaners in the pandemic, that hasn't gone away. We're still loaning Chromebooks, we're still loaning laptops. Our Learn to Earn program means that we gifted 707 devices that we gave out during the pandemic. Yes, that deserves applause, to students who needed it. And they didn't just get it just because they were here. They got it because we gave them an incentive of staying with us and earning credits before they actually would own their device. 707 earned those credits and now own that device that was previously a loaner. And we'll continue that program into the future. Wi-Fi is now everywhere on campus. Go out into the parking lot at the Forest Point, test it. Let us know if it's not working. Well, let Thurman know, don't let me know. But they've been going out and doing hotspot testing all around campus to make sure we don't have any down areas around campus. So any student can go anywhere on this campus. They can pull up their car. A member of the community can pull up their car into our parking lot and get on the Wi-Fi. We make it available for everyone. And that's a huge thing in access, as we learned during the depths of the pandemic. Parking, I'll bet you didn't know. Parking is now free at Saddleback for students with financial need. So we started a process, yeah. We've already issued over 500 permits. About 30% of our students qualify. If they're BOG waiver eligible, they qualify for a free permit. That little bit can make a difference for a student who has to drive here every day and now pay $5.50, $5.75 for a gallon of gas. That can make a huge difference. We continue the OCTA bus pass program. That's a 3-year commitment, and we hope to continue it beyond that, where all students pay out of their student fees, not us, but out of SGA. They're doing it out of their budget. They're making sure all students have free access to OCTA buses, not just to come to school, but anywhere they need to go in the OCTA system by virtue of being a student on this campus. Housing, there are tons of state grants this year that will help us with emergency grants for students. So the same way we funded emergency grants from HERE funds, the federal funds, and then before that CARES funds, we'll now have state funds this year to do the same thing. The board this month will be hearing a presentation from our consultants on whether or not it's feasible and attractive to use a new state program called SB 169 to build housing. That's another possibility, having permanent housing on our campus down the road. We created, I'll bet you didn't know this, we created a pay later button on the website. It's been in place this year. We've been rolling it out quietly so that it didn't overwhelm us. And now students can hit a button when they register if they're not able to pay at that time and pay later. From there, it shifts them into a payment plan. Starting this year, we will actually have, starting next term, I think, we'll actually have a more simplified payment plan. Right now, we're doing it manually. But we didn't want that to be a barrier to students getting back to school and starting back and coming back to us. So we now have a pay later plan in place. ZTC. What can I tell you about ZTC? We are a national leader in zero textbook costs and OER resources. We have 41% of our sections ZTC. At my previous college, we were struggling to get to 10%. We were struggling to get to 10%, and most colleges still are. 41%. And because more students enroll in ZTC classes, we're looking at about half of all of our enrollments are now ZTC. Half of all of our enrollments are ZTC. So if you are a faculty member who has taken that effort, and I know, I once did it for a class, to offer all open educational resources for your students, if you are one of our faculty coordinators or Kim DRC helping coordinate and support that, I am so thankful to you, and you are our heroes because you are making a huge difference in students and barriers and access, because textbooks, as we all know, can cost more than the fees that we charge at this college. Not uncommon at all. So huge way of pushing down those barriers for students. And by the way, if you are a faculty who hasn't been able to do that because your program hasn't allowed it or changing knowledge in your field, work with us, continue to work with us. Things are changing. Even if that was the case a year or two ago, check in again with the ZTC team and see what's available now, because we're willing to license, we're willing to do what it takes to help you move to ZTC. Wouldn't it be cool if we could be a majority ZTC school? If we could say the majority of our sections are ZTC? Based on the trajectory we're on right now, because we went from 36 to 41% in 1 year, I believe we could hit 50%, possibly even by the end of this year. Possibly by next fall, we could be a majority ZTC college. Nothing we can do would be more important in breaking down barriers for colleges. We're not allowed to charge zero fees, but we can offer zero textbook costs. Huge thing for our students. Thank you for all who do that. Promise Plan brings in more students who, of course, are unable to pay for tuition, who need financial need. In the current cohort of Promise coming in, 62% of them are financial aid eligible. So this is increased access. This is what Promise does for us. And finally, this year, very proud to announce, we are pushing out what we call a student needs survey. So the student needs survey asks the student questions in various areas about what they need, what their barriers are, what their access issues are. We can then use the aggregated data from that survey to steer us toward the things that we need to focus on. But here's the really cool part. The individual responses will beget a response from us. They will allow us to triage the student to figure out what they need. Imagine getting a response to a survey like, we're here to help. We heard that food was an issue for you. Like, come on in, we're going to show you the pantry, we're going to give you a tour. We are going to make it work for a student wherever they are. We take them wherever they are, and that's where we're going to get them over the border and through those barriers and through that access. So, is all this stuff working? All this stuff we've been doing for non-academic barriers, for access? Well, I like data. I like to look at the data. So what's the data for that we could actually look at? Well, you know, we focus a lot on course completion. And when we look at course completion and disaggregate the data, as Chancellor Barnes asked us to continue to do, we know that we have equity gaps. We have equity gaps for race, for Latino students. We have equity gaps for our African American students. We have equity gaps for a number of different areas, first generation students, et cetera. But guess where we don't have an equity gap for course completion? Low SES. Low income students who come here have the same odds of passing their classes. We will keep their focus on their study and on their learning and not on their hunger pangs and not worry about where they're sleeping tonight. That is what we do when we lower barriers and increase access for students. We take away that disadvantage that students would otherwise have in course success. Now, don't get me wrong. there are other things that get in the way down the road. We can get a student through a course, but what happens to a lot of low-income students is they get pulled away by other things. Life happens, right? And we know we lose them along the way, even though that course success data may not show gaps in it. But we're making progress in even getting those course completion numbers up and in making those equity gaps go away for all low-income students. I want to talk about all the things that we're doing in student achievement so that you also have pride in this moment and optimism for our future. So Chancellor Barnes mentioned the nomination we received from Aspen, top 150, huge. And Aspen looks at a lot of the student achievement data that I often talk about. So it's a big thing. This isn't like we wrote in a letter and it impressed them. Like we didn't write in anything. They found us from the data that's available in national databases. And they came to us and IBC and said, you are one of the top 150 schools in this country out of 2,000 community colleges. They said that. But why did we earn that? So what's the data that suggests that we're doing pretty well? Well, I wasn't sure totally when the Aspen nominations came out, and we had to do some digging. But then after commencement, when we thought we had about 6,300 credentials, we start seeing more credentials get awarded because more students complete. We never know at the time of commencement how many credentials we're going to have that year. It takes a month or two after that before we know. So now we know. Here's the number. Last year, let me build up to this a little bit. So 2021, commencement 2021, we had 6,318 credentials awarded. The year before that, we had more. We dropped with the pandemic. We lost a lot of students. In 2020, we had 6,860 credentials awarded. And the year before that, we had 6,965. That was our all-time high, and that was largely due to auto award, because that's the year we implemented it. But by the way, that year, auto award actually went retroactive. We were also pulling in some students that hadn't been auto awarded from that summer, so it inflated the number. But that was our all-time high at less than 7,000. This year, with fewer students available to graduate, we conferred 7,291 credentials, and more than half of those were associate degrees. 7,291, an all-time high, we believe, for Saddleback College. When enrollment was down, we gave out more credentials. And we always say it's not about the little moments, it's about completion. It's about getting them to the completion line, right? And we are completing more students than ever. That's what Aspen noticed. These are the numbers that they're looking at, and this is why we got that nomination and why we should be very proud of where we are in this moment. So how did we do that? Is this a coincidence? Are we all just being super nice? Is Elliott talking about this culture of connectivity, of human connection? Maybe we're all just being really nice to students, and is it working? We don't know. Because here's the thing. I've been thinking a lot about this biz-speak term, embracing ambiguity. And the thing about embracing ambiguity that I actually do like is this notion that sometimes you can do a lot of data-driven initiatives and projects and things and not be 100% sure of which of them are working. And that's exactly where we are. We are doing a lot of stuff here, and it's working. And if you ask me which of those things it is, I'm not sure. And not only am I okay with that, I am willing to embrace it. Let's do it. Let's keep doing them and adding things to the list until we are at 8,000 credentials, until we have no equity gaps. So what are some of the things that we've been doing? So I mentioned the promise cohort. So 77% of them came back in their second year. What I didn't mention is that of the 23% that didn't come back, half of those actually transferred to four-year universities after their first year. So we consider that a success. We are not here to hold on to students. We are not a profit-seeking company. We are here to help people get to university when they seek to get to university. And we are very excited about that success. Of those promised students, interesting little tidbit here, 27.8 units is the average completion for that 1 year. So they're full-time. And we know that being full-time, if you can, is an advantage and correlates very highly with student success. And being part-time status, and I'm going to talk about that a little bit later this morning, actually gives you a disadvantage, at least statistically. And we're going to talk about what that means and what we can do about it. But here's another thing about the Promise cohort and about our college in general. That Promise cohort last year in their first year, 86.4%, the speaker doesn't like me, 86.4% completed college-level English in that first year. 86.4%. Hey, English department, I don't know if you know this, you know it. You are number 3 in the state of California in getting students through transfer level English in the first year. Number 3 in the state. And math, you are making some progress. I am not here to beat you up. You are making good progress. So that promise cohort, 55.3% of them, the majority of the promise cohort, made it through math, transfer level math. And just to put some perspective on that, in 2017, it was 17%. 17%. Yeah, that's pretty bad, I know. But 3 times better in just 5 years. So give yourself some applause, math faculty and art, because you are doing some good work and we're getting better. The English department, and I think math is too, are already talking about like the next steps. There's this thing called contextualization, where they're working on making their classes relevant depending on the student's learning pathway, which we also know helps with completion of students. So these are the things that are coming together to make more students successful. Guided pathways, where are we in our learning pathways? I'll tell you where we are. 13,000 students at Saddleback have chosen a pathway. They're on their pathways, they're on their journey. We got them on their journey. It's the first pillar of guided pathways. And we are working to further implementation all along in this coming year, much more coming ahead. We have a new thing called GPS, Guide to Pathway Success, where we already have 2,000 students who've signed up for a platform to help students and faculty create a sense of community within their learning pathway, to help them feel like they're part of a cohort by being part of this individual learning pathway. 2,000 students have already signed up for that. Our new mapper, our program mapper, has been completed for all programs. It's in place. It even includes a sample schedule now that students get to see. This stuff makes a huge difference. If you meandered in college like I did, it would have helped me a lot for someone to say, here's your schedule for the first year. You can change any of it, but here's the default you're going to start with, and now we can talk about how to change it, as opposed to, you build it, see what you get, then come talk to a counselor when you're done. That's a really different approach, and that's really what the Guided Pathways framework does for us, our learning pathways. That's really what it does for students. Mentor collective, peer mentoring. Very few schools are doing this. We're one of the first community colleges to be part of this initiative. Last year, we had 1,109 students participate in the mentor collective with peer mentoring. We are already starting to get in some of the early data, and it's going to be positive. I have a strong sense because this is a national best practice, and it will likely be very good data. This year, not the same ones, not carryover, we're going to have 2,000 new peer mentoring relationships. So students will have a mentor assigned when they come into our college that they will have something in common with, that will be able to be sort of a guide to them that no one else can be. A student, another person saying, oh, you know, this happened to me too. You should try this. You should go here. Have you heard about this person? Have you heard that they have this little service? Do you know about tutoring? All those things that need to happen. We're starting a success coaching program. Thank you so much for that. Nick Perry and her team have been putting together a team of success coaches. Success coaches is also something we emulated from the privates and from small little schools that have been doing this for a long time, where a student has someone, not the counselor, who can actually just help them find resources, which often include a counselor, but someone at a very broad level. Hey, what can I do if this happens? I need to talk to somebody. Talk to a success coach. If you need to talk to a counselor, the success coach will send you to a counselor. If you need to talk to financial aid, the success coach will send you to financial aid. But having that resource works a lot. There's a very large experiment, a large partnership that happened. I've asked many people to read the article in the Atlantic that came out about a decade ago in a partnership between Starbucks and University of Arizona Online, where they created this team of success coaches, doubled their persistence rates, and I believe almost tripled their completion rates as a result of this program. Online learning continues. It hasn't gone away. It is 54% of our enrollments this term. We are following the student demand. I know many people are saying, when are we going to be 70% on ground again? I don't think we're ever going to be 70% on ground again, because students learned how to do this online, and we want to support them. And many times, they don't know that they would be better off on ground, and we need to help them get there if that is the case. But in the meantime, we're going to support them online in all of those ways we can. But we're also better at most schools at doing this. We had a head start. We knew how to do it. We're now doing this peer review of our online classes, the highest threshold of standards called POCR, P-O-C-R. It's a peer review process. We now have 67 classes that are POCR certified, which makes us number 2 in the state in POCR certification. Thank you, online education coordinators, and Kim again for that. So why does that make a difference? Because it means that now students in other service areas that need a class might pull up on the consortium that exists throughout the state, the list of colleges that teach that class online, because you can go anywhere, and then they order them by various criteria and qualifications. And one of the things that gets you to the top of the list is being peer review certified. So our classes will be at the top of the state list when they become POCR certified, which is a huge advantage for us, not only in keeping our own students using our system and taking our online classes, but also pulling more students from other areas that may need a class here or may want to take a class here. We are working toward the second tier of being certified in this consortium, which would actually make us a leader college where students could actually take a class here while enrolled at another college without having to go through the application process. Seamlessly take a class at another college. We'll probably be there by the end of this year if all goes well. Connection teams, new to our learning pathway, coming together. Faculty, counselors, support folks for students in each learning pathway. Targeting in our marketing to help access again. ZTC, you may have noticed that Jenny's got on the marquee, the ZTC, the return on investment for starting here if you're going to a transfer college. Huge advances for us. And finally, we have a grant going in the STEM department called Humanizing STEM. I rather like that name, where many of our STEM faculty are participating in how to build connections and how to make STEM feel more accessible to students, particularly students from minority groups who may not feel that way about STEM. These are some of the very cool things that are happening in student achievement that got us the nomination through the data that we're actually changing. We are putting out more credentials than ever and making students all the more successful at a very time when some of our best students have left us for the economy. At the very time when enrollment is down, we are doing better than ever in absolute numbers, not just percentages, but absolute numbers, because we are Saddleback, because we have always cared about this, and we have continued to do it through the pandemic. Be very proud of this moment and be very optimistic about our tomorrow. And finally, in looking at some of the stuff that's happening, I want to talk about our DEI efforts, because we are also making progress in some of that DEI work. So I mentioned before that we've already closed the equity gaps for the low SES students, at least in course completion. So we know when it comes to those access issues, those non-academic barriers, we are doing great. I got to tell you, if you think like we could do more, maybe we could, but we are doing great, and we just need to keep up that good work and now focus some of that on these other groups that have disproportionate impact because of things that we haven't done yet, that we haven't thought about yet when we look at the individual data. So we've also identified for the first time metrics that we can use to measure inclusivity. So when I say that, you know, we always talk about this is a place of belonging, this is a campus that cares, this is a campus where you feel human connection. Oh, what's the data for that? Do you know? Guess what? There's data. There's surveys that we did of students. We've actually done a couple surveys last year that tell us whether students feel included, that tell us whether students feel like this is a good place to come if you're a member of the minority group that I identify with. And we know from those surveys that we actually don't have significant inclusivity gaps in a lot of areas where we might think we did, particularly for students of color. We did not have large inclusivity gaps for African American students or for Hispanic students. But we found, and some of you know this because I've talked about it before, and it was the subject of a Friday update, that we did have inclusivity gaps for two groups. We did. LGBTQIA and students with disabilities, students who are differently able. We have to work on that. But now we can focus. Now we can hone in on it and say, here's what the data told us. Let's focus on these groups. Let's figure out how to make sure they feel included, that they don't feel like it's too difficult to be in this campus and that there's not enough people like them on this campus. Coming very soon, we are about to hire a director of equity that will help bring together and coordinate a lot of the equity work that's happening on campus. And we will finally create the equity center that we have been waiting for with a coordinator to coordinate some of the programming for that center under the director of equity. Let me say this as we go forward. So last spring, we came together, and thank you, Jenny and Kim, for coordinating the visioning sessions that we did. And the purpose of the visioning sessions, if you recall, was to help us get from that crisis mentality of the pandemic of 2 years of thinking, how do we stay safe? How do we deal with a crisis? How do we react to this thing that's happened? To trying to rise up and become more strategic again. So thinking about the college in the long term and to have that visioning. That was incredibly useful and incredibly resourceful for me in particular, and I hope productive for many of you. So now that we have that vision of where we want to be and where our students need to be, it is time this year to think about how to focus in and actually execute that vision. So here's what I ask us to focus in on this year. Ready? Course completion. It's the easiest thing for us to look at to implement changes and to see if the changes are working. And it correlates with completion very highly. So if we can just focus on course completion this year, one thing, I think it will go a long way to help us execute the vision we all have of being an equitable, inclusive campus for all students. Now, what is it we're going to look at in course completion? Well, first, I think we need to hone in the focus a little bit more. So I've asked faculty leaders and Oprah to hone in on some classes that seem to get in the way of a lot of students. So we've called them HELP classes. HELP stands for High Enrollment, Low Pass. So this is what we did. Oprah, I didn't do any of this, Oprah did all this work. Oprah looked at classes that have more than 100 people enrolled in them, and the largest one has 2,200 students enrolled in it, so many, many sections, and if the pass rate was 65% or less. So how many classes do you think out of 2,000 we have that fit those criteria of high enrollment greater than 100 and low pass 65% or lower? Do you think it's 300? Do you think it's 100? It's actually less. It's about, I think, 65 classes, Shuka, if I'm correct? 65 HELP classes? 35. I didn't feign that just now. She just corrected me. It's a very small number. So that's the number that we can focus on. We can look and help all the faculty, the lab techs, those who support those classes, and say, what can we do for you to support you to really boost the pass rates in these high enrollment, low pass classes? And by no means, if you teach those classes when we identify them, should you feel shame. I taught one of those classes too. It was called anatomy. It had a very low pass rate. It was incredibly rigorous, an incredible amount of work for students, and they came in incredibly ill prepared for the class. But I did get the pass rate up. There are ways you can do it without dropping rigor, which you know by now I never ask you to do and is never the solution to insufficient pass rates. But the other thing that we can do as we look at course completion is now focus on a specific equity gap. We can look at the equity gaps within course completion. So what I've asked Shuka to do, and we're going to be working on this term, is by the end of this term, so early spring, mid-spring, every faculty member who teaches a course will get a data push out that shows their course completion rate in their class, and with disaggregated data, assuming the sample size of their class is large enough to reveal that, of how different demographic groups did within their class. And we'll give you some sort of average for everybody who teaches that class, so you'll have something to compare it to. And don't worry, this isn't an exercise in shaming. It's about helping people stop and reflect and think, what should I do? What can I do? And that's where we'll all come together as a college and say, here's some things you can do. Here's some PD. Try this. Let's all get around you and help you actually get this class off of the help list and narrow those equity gaps. If we look at the help classes in particular, the equity gaps that we normally have actually become amplified in these low pass classes. So let me give you an example. Typically, our equity gaps in course completion for Latino students, for Latinx students, tend to be around 6 to 8%, I think. I forgot the latest data I saw. It does change from year to year and term to term. For African American students, it's huge. It's like 14 to 16%. So for the Hispanic students, I said 6 to 8% usual. In math, it's 17%. So that's not the fault of the math faculty. That is us as a college who have to figure out how to help math through all the supports that we give them, how to narrow those equity gaps. because if the class pass rate is already at 50 to 60%, and now you tack on a 17% gap, that means that a Latino student who comes into this campus has something like a 30-35% chance of passing math in the first year. That's not acceptable. I hope we can agree that's not acceptable. We can't blame students for being ill-prepared. It is us who are ill-prepared for them. It is not them who are ill-prepared for us. So let's come together and figure out how to address those equity gaps once and for all on course completion. One thing we can do together this year, focused on the help classes, focused on course completion, and focus on disaggregated data for those classes in particular. That would be a huge stride for all of us. And then a couple of other things we're going to do this year. One is we're instituting, thanks to the DEI work and a work group that the EIC group and a work group that they put together, we've identified an implicit bias training program that we're going to bring in. We're going to start with leaders in various cohorts, and the cohorts will include, we're inviting the faculty who teach help classes to actually take part in that implicit bias training. That's the foundation. You know, we read Kendi, that's a good foundational start. Like, what is racism? How is it structural? What can we do about that? The next step, what are all the biases that we all carry with us? How many of you have been through the implicit bias training and said, okay, I get it, but you haven't told me what I can do about that? Because I don't know if that was your experience, but my experience when I got through that Keenan training, and I thought it was pretty good, by the way. I know some people complain about it, but I thought it was pretty engaging. But when I got through with it, they talk about this thing of decoupling, the idea that you can decouple your own implicit biases, but they don't tell you how to do that. Like, I didn't really see solutions. So this year, I'm introducing, for the first time in 3 years, another book. We're going to have the President's Equity Read this year. And we're looking into buying 500 copies, so the first 500 books will be free for anyone who wants to participate in the book club. And the book this year is called The End of Equity. And End of Equity came out last fall, and it had very positive reviews in the New York Times, and I read it, and then I ignored it and didn't buy the book. And then Ray Zimmerman hit me up a few weeks ago and said, hey, have you heard about this book? So I'm back on. So End of Equity is going to be our President's Equity book read this year. We'll get copies for everybody. We'll have a book club around it, and we will work together to help all of the faculty who are teaching classes with high enrollment, low pass, to help all of us who are responsible for students with equity gaps to come together and figure out how to fix this problem once and for all. This year, we're going to do that. And finally today, I said I wanted to talk about a disproportionately impacted group that doesn't get a lot of attention. See, here we are. I'm not looking at the notes anymore. There's things I missed. I do this every time. We have this in common. But I know that if I thought of it in my head, it's probably more important than what's on the paper. So here's what I want to say about the non-trad group. So non-trad, non-traditional, means 25 plus typically in most higher ed speak. And it's that group of students that's been out of high school a long time. So I had a couple experiences in my life that kind of helped me understand the non-trad in an odd, you don't want to take it too far, but it's sort of a privileged way, because I was very fortunate to be a non-trad in a high-tier law school, but I did it after going through medical school. So I came back when I was 27 years old into law school. And everyone in my law school class was 22 or 23. Michigan likes people fresh. They like clay that they can mold. They don't like people with too many life experiences. So I think had I not been a doc, there were 3 docs in my class. So I think had I not been a doc, I don't think I would have gotten into Michigan. But nevertheless, I was there amongst a bunch of people who were 4 and 5 years younger than me. And you would say, well, that's not a big difference. What's the big difference? There's a huge difference between 22 and 27. I had a job. I had, after medical school, started a consulting company to help lawyers understand the medical issues in their cases. I was working like 20, 30 hours a week. I had a relationship. I had things to do. I had hobbies and things I like to do. I had no interest in making law review or getting good grades. I'm at Michigan. Like, the job, when you go someplace like that, the jobs come to you. You don't really have to look very far. You don't need to worry about your GPA. So I didn't have any of that energy or that competitive spirit that students around me had, and I was intimidated. I thought, like, oh my God, I'm working, and these folks, they're gonna like study their butts off every night. I don't know that I have that discipline. And I found it, and I found a community. But it was very daunting to do that as someone who felt I didn't fit in. And obviously there were other reasons I felt I didn't fit in as well, including being LGBTQ, but at Michigan that was less of a problem. It was more that I stood out. My otherness was really about being older. So that was my first experience. And then when I was teaching, I taught, as some of you know, biology. And because I taught the anatomy and physiology and cell biology that's used in the nursing track, most of my students were pre-nursing students. And I love and so miss my pre-nursing students. But in my pre-nursing classes, there would be a lot of Ambers and Brittany's who were 22, 23 years old. And then there were these returning students. We used to call them returning students, not non-trads. I still like returning better than non-trad, but we'll go with non-trad. So there were a lot of these non-traditional students. And the typical one would be like someone who had raised her kids and had gone to college, but had sort of given up her career at some point to raise her kids. And then the kids went to college, and she decided to come back to nursing, and she was taking her prereqs. That was a very typical scenario in my class. And these students, these folks who came back later in life to become nurses, they were completely intimidated by the people around them. They were so freaked out that everybody was 20 years old and full of energy and super smart and ready to study and get down to work and writing down everything. They thought they would never make it. And they would come to me and they would say things like, my memory is not as good as these people. I'm like 45, 50 years old, my memory is shot. Like, really, at 45, 50? I don't think that's true. But that's what they thought. That's what the non-trad carries with them. And they don't have the energy. And how will you meet people? There's this affinity, this natural affinity among young people for each other. They look for people who look like them, right? Like, what am I going to do? I'm a 45-year-old homemaker. I don't fit in. And they thought they wouldn't make it. But the thing is, they had great self-discipline and project management skills. And they knew how to do it. And they cared about what they learned sometimes more than the younger students. They were actually there to learn. They cared about learning more than the grades. And the grades followed with that passion for learning. And they ended up great. But what I discovered when I became an administrator is my anecdotes, my little study of nurses in my pre-nursing classes did not suggest an overall picture, because the overall picture for non-trads was much more bleak. So here's the problem for our non-traditional students. They are 3.5 times more likely to be part-time. And it's really part-time status that gives students the disadvantage. There's another disadvantage between these two variables. There's sole other disadvantage just from being non-traditional age, but it's really about being part-time more than anything else. So what's the difference between these part-times, these non-trad students and traditional students? Well, one, obviously age, but that's not the issue. We want to get deeper than that. Well, they often are working. They're 2 to 3 times more likely to be working 30 plus hours a week when they come to us. Therefore, they often don't qualify for financial aid. So they're on their own. They have to work in order to actually qualify for school and to get fees, to cover their fees and to cover their expensive books. But if they stop working, they won't have the money to do that. So they often have families. They often have busy lives that pull them away. They often have kids in their families that they're caring for and involved in their child rearing. So they require from us special attention in terms of flexibility and special attention in terms of our adaptability to them, in terms of thinking, what is this great thing we do for all students, this building of human connection, and how do we do it for this student who feels different here for a very different way? It's not that the student says, I'm LGBTQ, I don't feel like I belong here, I think everybody's homophobic, and now, okay, well, let me reach out to you. This is not a homophobic place. I am LGBTQ, I am the president of this place. I can do that. But how do we do that now for a student who's older than all the other students when everything we've done has been geared at 20-year-olds? Everything we do in terms of the way we communicate, the way that we make sure all of our platforms are available on mobile devices, the way that we schedule is completely for that 20-year-old student who probably isn't working in many cases. So how do we shift our entire focus, our communication, the way we connect, so that everything we do for all students that makes them so successful also applies to that student, to that non-trad student? That's the trick that I am asking us to focus on this year as we think not just about those help classes and course completion and equity gaps, but in particular a couple groups that we don't often pay attention to. And one that I'm asking us to pay attention to is this student who is non-traditional, who feels like they don't fit in for very different reasons than any of the other students who fit into our DI groups, our disproportionately impacted groups. Let's think about how we communicate with them, how we schedule our classes for them, what our syllabi read like for them. What do we do to better support and help them? Because they may not be able to shift from part-time to full-time. So really this becomes a question of how we support our part-time students. And I'll tell you why this is so important if you need a business reason. The number of graduating high school students in Orange County is going to go like this over the next 20 years. It's happening nationally, but it's happening worse here in South Orange County. Moreover, this area is becoming too expensive for 20-year-olds to be able to live. So they're going to move farther out and attend colleges farther away. And those colleges aren't as good as us. So we need to make ourselves available to them. And if we look at where those students are going to come from so that we can keep the lights on and keep supporting all students in our area, it's not going to be the high school students. Anna's new job is not Director of Outreach. It's Director of Outreach and Strategic Partnerships, because we have got to find new ways of finding students. And the students we are most likely to find that we have never sufficiently captured are the non-trads, because our mission, our future, is locked very tight into our to morph into more than the post-high school education, but rather a place that people come back to upskill, to get a second career, a new career. That is the future of community colleges, and the ones that get out in front of that and embrace it and do it first will be successful. And when we are successful, we will continue the funding streams that allow us to do all of this construction and all of the good student supports we do, not just for the non-trads, but for all students of all colors, of all beliefs, so that we can do that work well into the future. And why do I believe that we can do that? Because we are the school that has closed these course success gaps for low SES students. We are the school that gave out 1,000 more credentials at the end of the pandemic when we were down in enrollment by 13%. We hit a record number of completions. We are the school that did those things. So no one can tell me that we can't increase course success for all students and close equity gaps. No one can tell me that we are not the best school in this state to reach the non-trads and make them feel connected and included in part of us. We are Saddleback, and that is what we do best, and that is why I am so damn proud of what we have done, and I am so darn optimistic about the year ahead and where we go. And if you don't feel that today, I will work this year to make sure you do. But I hope you feel it today, because this is an amazing place, and I am part of an amazing family, and I am so proud to be in that role. Thank you all. At this time, I would like to introduce the president of the Academic Senate, who is here to talk about another group that we often do not talk about, Heidi Ochoa.
Here we are. We made it. The 2020, oh, can you hear me? I'm sure you can actually hear me from my projection, right? So I'll start again. Here we are. We made it. The 2022-23 academic year. For all of us, that is a huge feat, that we made it here together. If you are anything like me, your magic 8-ball last year read, outlook unclear. Really, really unclear. 8-ball broken. Please stop shaking me, magic 8-ball says, I'm tired. This time last year, I remember waking up every morning thinking, what's happening, who am I, and who have we become? Before I begin, I'd like to take a moment to remember the people who retired, the loved ones we've lost, the ones who spent their personal and professional lives paving space for us to be here together today. For me, the 2022-23 academic year is about our slow return, not just to campus, but to each other. Whether you are administration, faculty, or staff, during the pandemic, you were an online and on-call employee. You contributed to our campus community. Thank you. Many of us doubled down more than we had ever done before. We fought for each other. We fought for our students. We fought for others, and some of us still felt alone. I'm going to lighten this up real quick. The college president walks into a bar. The bartender asks, "What can I do for you?" The president replies, "Truth be told, what I really need is some meaningful data on equity." And the bartender says, "Let me tell you a story." And the president asks, "What's the proof in that?" This year on Academic Senate, we will continue our work on equity. Your Academic Senate executive team, Secretary Michelle Duffy, Vice President of Equity and Inclusion, Efren Rangel, Vice President at Large, Deidre Kavazi, Past President, Dan Walsh, Past President and President-elect, Margot Lovett, EIC Chair and ITL Chair, Brenda Carrizosa and Pete Murray, and EPA Chair, Claire Cesario, are going to collaborate with administration, students, and staff to continue to work on equity, to continue to shift our culture around the student experience. Part of this culture shift will be an effort on my part to amplify DSPS voices in professional development, curriculum, and committee. Here's my story. I have two children, Lily Blue and Dublin Black. My daughter developed in a neurotypical way, or a quote-unquote neurotypical way, and my son is considered neurodivergent. He is 10. He is learning how to say hi right now, which we're all very excited about. A couple of years ago, during my daughter's parent-teacher conference, unknowing of my son's developmental journey, the teacher said to me, "I love Lily. She's so easy to work with," which is, not so easy to do, being that she sits right next to someone who is just impossible. He's completely out of control. And then the disabilities aide passed by to introduce himself, and he said hi, and he left, and then the teacher said, "He is such a special soul. He handles the students that I can't. It's not my specialty." And for a moment, I just really thought to myself, there's a lot of sass in me that I want to unload on this teacher. I really do. But I kept it inside, and I decided to tighten my relationship with the disabilities community, and I decided to run for Academic Senate President. What I learned from this and many other experiences as both a teacher and an educator, academia has unintentionally and intentionally created an us versus them culture between neurotypical developing and neurodivergent developing individuals, and between the faculty, staff, and counselors that serve them. Our campus has made great strides to make changes in this culture, but we have more collectively to do. Over the summer, DSPS counselor Michael Hoggett and Stacy Eldred graced me with wisdom that I believe is useful for our work together on this campus for the coming year. Hoggett stated, "Disabled students simultaneously express satisfaction with the DSPS office while also expressing frustration, marginalization, and exclusion on the campus as a whole. We are not the only college who struggles in this area. Let's be one of the first to move the needle in so deep that any attempt to rethread what's good can't be undone easily." There are several improvements that our college can make Today, I'd like to highlight improvements in 3 areas that I learned from DSPS. First, college structure. Disabled students are not the sole responsibility of DSPS personnel. Students with visible disabilities are not OASIS students or KNEA students, and when we automatically treat them as such, we are reinforcing segregation. Second, communication. Many of us still use language that individuals, whether they be students or college personnel, are uncomfortable with, like handicapped, able-bodied, physically challenged, and differently abled. Next, when a student communicates that he, she, they feels discriminated against or marginalized, they're often told that they are misunderstood. Telling him, her, they that they are misunderstood communicates that they aren't smart enough to decode what is happening. It also assumes that just because they aren't verbalizing their observations, similarly that they are incapable of reading and interpreting information. As Hoggett states, validating a student's feelings is not the same as accepting responsibility for them. According to Stacy Eldred, our disabled students are infantilized and treated as though they are significantly below their actual age. She states, I often heard disabled students called cute or special, which is dehumanizing. We need to presume competence from all of our students. Finally, there are stories that the DSPS office can share, whereby personnel have said something along the lines of, okay, as long as we make room for the real students. All students are real students. Want to know more about how to better communicate? Read Demystifying Disability, What to Know, What to Say, and How to Be an Ally by Emily Ladow. The DSPS office has copies for you. Third, curriculum. If you are a faculty member, rather than fix your curriculum retroactively upon accommodation, use universal design. Be proactive, because when you wait for an accommodation, you've already lost a few weeks that the student could have been moving forward. If you're unsure of what universal design is, reach out to Valerie, in FCSS, Stacy in our OASIS program, and Michael Hoggett in DSPS. Additionally, the Academic Senate Executive Team is hosting a presentation by Long Beach City College on September 9th called the Curriculum Audit, where they go over elements of universal design, and that Zoom link will be on the Academic Senate webpage. Additionally, unless your student learning outcomes specifically addresses speed or time, avoid treating time or speed as the ultimate marker of learning. Finally, if you're an online faculty and you haven't gotten POCR certified, sign up and do it. You get paid for it and you learn about accessibility elements. Want to deepen your communication with the DSPS office? Visit the DSPS Q&A sessions every month this semester, where they will address barriers that disabled students face. They plan to leave ample time for college personnel to ask targeted questions so that disabled students can be better supported. To DSPS, faculty, counselors, and staff, thank you from the bottom of our souls for leading the charge for students with and without diagnoses. To the Board of Trustees, district services, administration, faculty, and staff, let this be the year that we meet DSPS students where they are at, where we keep working harder to create a sense of belonging for our DSPS students. If our conversations about diversity, equity, and inclusion is not about disability, we have missed a significant portion of human minds and hearts that we serve. I believe we can make waves together. May our year be filled with growing pains and joy. May we walk into the year knowing that all of our brains, all of our development is growing and regressing at various speeds and in various orders. May we reimagine an environment that is spiritually, physically, and psychologically safer for all of us to create, to become. Happy Happy 2022-23.
Thank you, Heidi. This is Saddleback. Welcome, everybody. It's 2022-23. It's going to be a great year. Have a great fall.